Tanares RPG Kickstarter launch is approaching fast, so it is high time for me to simp for my sponsors again and take a deeper look into the free sample of a Madwalker class. It is an extremely risk-tolerant archetype which dares going to great lengths to accomplish its goals. It has that signature Tanares mechanical ambitiousness and complexity to it, but the whole package looks very fun to me. I will admit I prefer it over the Dragonblade, not for the power, but because it's tailor-made for someone like me who often defaults to role-playing deranged Sigma lone wolf edgelords. In the world of Tanares, Madwalkers are socially ostracized outcasts and outlaws who tap into the energies of the Penumbral plane and exhibit various aberrant powers. As far as I can tell, Penumbral plane is somewhat similar to Shadowfell in Forgotten Realms. Both of these dark dimensions of horror and despair mirror the material physical plane. However, space, time and gravity do not work normally in Penumbral plane, and it is also brimming with all sorts of aberrations, so it also kind of resembles the astral plane at the same time. In that regard, Madwalkers are playable in most other D&D settings out there. The majority of unfortunate individuals who do find themselves exposed to the horrific penumbral dreams, nightmares and monsters usually die, or if they are lucky and they don't, they are really not so lucky because they become completely mad. Madwalkers are the lucky few who survive and thrive on their newfound powers, developing a literal method to their madness. They possess a high degree of control over these dangerous penumbral energies. However, it still strains their minds and bodies as they twist into aberrant shapes and manifest strange mutations, just like the aberrant YouTube algorithm twists and transforms every time you press the like, subscribe and bell icon buttons down below. I think we can all agree that there's a certain element of roguishness to Madwalkers. 1d8 hit die is a standard. Light armor points to a reliance on high dexterity scores. The class is worst in all weapons though, but it still has thieves tools and 3 skill proficiencies with solid choices like perception, stealth, acrobatics and intimidation. The saving throw proficiencies point to a more charismatic rather than intelligent wanderer. However, it is not apparent to me why the class doesn't come equipped with leather armor in its starting equipment. Sure, it's cheap to buy, but why not have it right away when basically all other classes in the game get some kind of armor at level 1 anyway? It's a minor issue, but I'd like to see that buff in the official release. These mechanical similarities to a rogue class pretty much end right here. Every time they decide to rely on their aberrant mutations, Madwalkers' sanity progressively weakens, exposing them to more danger and ultimately to an involuntary body transformation into some twisted monstrous shape. I'll cover these mutations later in the video. It's not really clear to me why the save DC calculation requires a decent wisdom ability modifier when the class is proficient in charisma saving throws. I mean, it's definitely not following the typical class design. Maybe Dragori games don't want to crowd the already rich charisma multiclass meta with sorcerers, warlocks, paladins and whatnot, but it does result in a slight madness issue, well, no pun intended. Anyway, the progressive loss of control resulting from reliance on aberrant mutations is expressed in insanity points and has 4 steps, each one achieved as you gain more and more of these points. The first 3 incrementally penalize your attack roll accuracy, armor class and saving throw bonuses with negative modifiers. It's a resource for you, and the more you spend it, the more you gimp yourself. You will always have to weigh the risk versus reward ratio, the benefits versus the downsides. However, the last step forces you into a penumbral shape, a feature that greatly resembles that of Druid's wild shape. Much of the wording is exactly the same. However, instead of just generic challenge rating and movement speed type limitations, you're given specific shapes at each level and you can pick and choose which ones you turn into when you transform. These shapes all have their own unique stat blocks that I will cover later in the video, so keep watching. There's a smidge of Barbarian's Rage in this new form as well, as you also cannot cast spells, you lose all concentrations on existing spells if you have any, and can't even really rely on your aberrant powers anymore. I mean, that really kind of makes sense because you've basically fully mutated into this creature as a result of becoming highly insane, temporarily. I'm really not sure if turning into a penumbral shape removes the -3 penalty to attacks, armor class and saves. Intuitively, I think it would not apply anymore, at least not as long as you're morphed, because the aforementioned restrictions gimp you enough already. However, after reverting to your humanoid form back again, because this Aberrant form only lasts for a couple of minutes, the -3 penalty probably comes back, right? Some extra wording and clarity would help alleviate this ambiguity. Of course, this trail of madness doesn't just end there, because as you lean into either nightmarish or arachnid powers, you also gain more subclass-specific Aberrant mutations and penumbral shapes. I don't know if the Nightmare Augury trail and the Aberrant Arachnid trail will remain the only two subclass options in the final product, but I certainly like that you get to choose your subclass at level 2. Sadly, at level 3, you get Shadow Sense, which will 9 out of 10 times end up being just a debuff to all of your charisma skills except Intimidation. It kinda makes sense, but very few campaigns heavily feature any other planes of existence other than the prime material physical plane. Curse of Stride is a rare but notable exception to this pattern, but you know, Madwalker would certainly fit perfectly into that particular somber reality. In all other cases, you would almost always become even more weird and socially awkward as soon as you hit level 3. I mean, again, it makes sense for this type of character thematically and flavorfully, but it's a big debuff, so I think buffing this feature by making it give Madwalkers expertise on intimidation checks at this level when they get this feature is a step in the right direction. Or, since you do need high wisdom for Aberrant mutations, you maybe get to add your wisdom modifier to the intimidation checks. Just something to make the scary weirdo lunatic flavor better mechanically represented, just kinda like some of my ideas off the top of my head. Blades of Madness feature comes to the rescue here. While it doesn't seem like much, that extra 1d4 damage on all melee attack rolls will accumulate over time, especially since the class gets the standard extra attack martial feature at level 5. I think it wouldn't hurt to buff this feature further to ultimately end up being a 1d12 extra damage at higher levels, but maybe I'm not seeing the full picture here with all the penumbral shapes and aberrant mutations and all of that synergy stacking on top of each other, because I'm just theory crafting here. I haven't actually played this class. I mean, some divine or eldritch smites on top of your standard damage on a critical hit as a result can potentially be insane damage roll at level 3, so I don't know, maybe it would be imbalanced, maybe it would result in some crazy multi-class combinations resulting in too much damage too early. What I do know is that the Aberrant Arachnid subclass is the bane of all the arachnophobes, obviously, right? If you're scared of spiders, you're gonna have nightmares playing this class. I'll talk about the spidery subclass mutations and shapes in a few minutes, so let me focus on this Cunning Predator feature right away. It's really freaking good. If you've watched my Candlekeeper video about a Twilight Cleric character build, you will know already how highly I value the steady influx of temporary hit points that trigger basically every round on every one of your turns. Seeing how the class features push basically the whole class into a melee combat specialist, and how your armor class and saving throws get worse as your insanity points grow, you will definitely need a steady source of temporary hit points to mitigate all the damage coming your way as you're risking your life being in melee. I've seen firsthand how powerful it is when you reduce all incoming damage by 20 to even up to 50% every single round. The temporary hit point benefit is massive. Whoever hasn't experienced it is probably underestimating it. I'm not exactly sure why the feature assumes you might be wielding a shield when the core class proficiencies don't even give you the proficiency with shields in the first place. The penalty to using armor types you're not proficient with is just too big to even consider doing it in the first place. I'll take that +1 to AC. Gods know you will need all the armor you can get. Let's talk about this awesome table you can see on the screen. I absolutely love it. If I ever get a chance to play this class, I won't do it if my DM doesn't allow me to use these madness effects in the first place. I mean, I really think this shouldn't even be an optional feature, you know, so Dragori Games designers, if you're listening, just remove the optional clause in the first place. The class as a whole is best suited for someone experienced anyway, and this feature just gives you that extra theme, flavor, and mechanical diversity and support for that character who feels and plays exactly like a mad lad it is supposed to be. Luckily, you can choose to be immune to Delirious, Sadistic, and Fanatic, which are mechanically underwhelming in my own humble opinion. Maniacal and Narcissistic are my favorites because they fit my own real-life persona, and mechanically they stack and synergize together like melted cheese on a hot slice of bread. I'm not sure if Gloomy's automatic 10 is supposed to be before or after applying the skill check modifiers, so a bit better wording may be needed here. Enraged synergizes synergizes nicely with your Shadow Sense feature, and finally Fearful just wraps up the lovely Lunatic into a neat little wholesome package. Let's talk about mutations, finally. Bioluminescent secretion makes creatures fall prone, and that inflicts disadvantage on all of your party mates' ranged attack rolls. Unless the party is full of melee characters, it's really not that good. The difficult terrain isn't relevant in most cases either, unless you're planning to ramp up your insanity points quickly in order to reach that penumbral shape faster. I don't see a particular benefit to that strategy, but we are talking about the ranged lunatic character here, so to hell with being reasonable in the first place. Though if you're frequently traversing through labyrinths and getting lost in them, you will at least know if you're going around in circles. Dark energy seems like a trap option because the Aberrant mutations feature states you can only use one Aberrant mutation per round. Elastic Limbs is a pure value option because its duration is generous and the effect is applicable to a wide range of combat and exploration circumstances. Penumbral Echoes is a solid crowd control option, as inflicting frightened condition against a horde of enemies surrounding you can quickly turn the odds of winning the fight in your favor. Penumbral Gaze is a must-take in my own opinion. Perception checks are super common, very important, and the prospect of having 120 feet of dark vision is making me honestly moist. The wording of Space Distortion makes me believe that you can basically negate the accuracy penalties from the accumulated insanity points. Think about it. With a typical min-maxed ability score spread, you have +3 from dexterity and +3 from wisdom and a +2 from proficiency. That's a +8 to hit right there. With a bit of luck, you can stack that maniacal, narcissistic, madness, whatever accuracy buff on top, and now all of a sudden that -3 insanity penalty doesn't even look that bad. Horrid Tentacle is a no-brainer as well, especially if you're relying on two-weapon fighting approach anyway. Despite the bonus action bottleneck, it actually stacks nicely with Elastic Limbs. The benefit of increased movement speeds and long reach are often underrated and underestimated. The advantage on acrobatics and athletics is a solid anti-grappling measure. Again, I don't know why the shield is getting mentioned. This class, or any class really, cannot afford gimping itself with automatic disadvantage on all strength and dexterity attacks, saves and ability checks by wearing a piece of armor it is not proficient with. Both of the Aberrant Arachnid subclass specific mutations are very good in my opinion. You can only pick one of them, but it does not count towards the number of mutations known, so your versatility goes through the roof. Noxious Attack does come with, let's say, 3 downsides. It bottlenecks that bonus action similar to Horrid Tentacle, so pairing those two is clunky, especially if you're dual wielding. A lot of monsters are also resistant or completely immune to poison damage, as well as proficient in constitution saves. Still, being able to stack up to 10 extra poison damage on every attack is worth every single insanity point, especially with extra attack feature at level 5 and maybe even Sentinel feat for that reaction attack. Shadow Web is pure power, a large area control effect that severely restricts enemies' mobility or downright restrains them completely is the obvious first impression. You're basically getting the benefit of web spell 1 level sooner than every sorcerer and wizard out there. Options for environmental manipulation and improved 3-dimensional mobility are situational, but they do allow for a playstyle unavailable to most other characters out there. You can build and create cover for rogues to hide behind, build makeshift steps for a wizard to climb on. Creative problem solvers will find plenty of ways to use this. However, wording is substandard in my opinion and does need polishing. It's not immediately clear to me whether you only need one action to activate it and then all of these features are sort of like free, or whether each one of these options requires a separate dedicated action for it to be triggered. I think it's the latter, but I'm not sure. In either case, this is awesome ability. But enough about mutations, let's see what happens when you over-mutate and lose your shit completely and just turn into an aberration. Remember, you can still choose which one to turn into, though they do get progressively more powerful as you gain levels. Don't forget about the Blades of Madness either, which get automatically applied to all the Penumbral shapes damage rolls, so their melee multi-attacks are actually quite damaging by default. First of all, look at that artwork. Freaking amazing if you ask me. Anyway, the stat blocks are mechanically sound and come with a strong theme that seems very fun to play. It's very thematic. Gluttony is pretty stacked right away. Blood Frenzy trait ensures advantage on most attack rolls in most situations. Gluttonous Aura will see your ally mages thanking you because you contributed to their spells actually actually working instead of flopping. A Ravenous Bite turns you into a tank as you siphon your victim's hit points into your temporary hit point pool. Envy stat block is kind of a glass cannon, but its ranged attack option ensures some hit and run tactics. As you're observing from a safer distance, your Heartburn trait has the potential to pump that first attack roll modifier to a +10 as you're seething with spite watching all your allies getting last hits. And if you do find yourself in melee, Envy Aura can inject your toxic jealousy into the hearts of your enemies as well. The spidery stat blocks of the Aberrant Arachnid subclass are fun too. Both share an identical set of traits that make them masters in stealth and moving across walls, ceilings and their own spiderwebs. Their multi-attacks are auto-buffed by Blades of Madness, of course. Scout's web action option is such a nice thing to give your allies, in particular because restrained condition is very punitive and the enemy has to waste a turn trying to break free from it. To wrap this video up, I really cannot wait to get a chance to playtest this class. Sure, the wordings and descriptions are a bit sloppy, but I mean, these free samples are basically equivalent to Unearthed Arcana, and when have we ever had Wizards of the Coast, the official 5th edition designers, make a well-worded playtest material, huh? So, after Dragori Games polishes the ambiguous sentences and irons out the kinks in the final product, this class will be fire in my own opinion. Of course, if your DM approves it in the first place, I don't see why not though, if you're a little bit persuasive. The class has built-in checks and balances, ensuring its power never really snowballs away from the official 5th edition classes, at least not for the first 3 levels. The Tanares RPG Kickstarter launch is right around the corner, August 31st, and if you're still, haven't, make sure you enter their massive giveaway and subscribe to the launch notification list. The project is gearing up to be massive, and as you can see, they've set the bar high for themselves. Their track record in the board game industry instills me with confidence in their ability to deliver on the promises. All the links are in the description down below. Special shoutouts to all of my current patrons, thank you for your continued support. I will make one more video about the rest of the Tanares RPG free samples for character customization options specifically, and then we'll be back to the standard programming, don't you worry about it. As always, like, share, comment, subscribe and hit the bell button for the YouTube algorithm, and with everything said and done, MinMax munching out, and talk to you soon.